Texas football is back on the practice field in preparations for year 2 in the SEC and another run at the college football playoff. Helping us talk all things Texas, what he's seen from the Longhorns this spring. Good friend of mine, good friend of the show, CJ Vogel on Texas football joins us once again. CJ, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Excited to talk some Longhorns football with you. Kickoff is just around the corner, my friend.
Man, it's a good start to the spring in Austin. And, man, the weather's starting to heat up, and so are those expectations for Arch Manning. But I'm excited for it, Chris. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, CJ, let's start there, man. I mean, that's the big storyline when it comes to Texas football in the spring. This is Arch Manning's team now, right? Quinn Ewers obviously going to the NFL draft. Arch Manning takes over as QB1, although I don't know if it's been actually publicly announced by Sark, encouraging competition, but we all know he's the guy. Your thoughts, what you've seen from Arch Manning, what the chatter has been like around Texas camp to this point?
Yeah, Sark actually has. He said, look, I have no quarterback competition this year. We know that line of succession is going to run through Arch Manning. It's one of those, first years with Sark, obviously with when Quinn took over, it was we got to wait and see kind of thing. And, of course, he had the competition with Hudson Card and Casey Thompson in 2021. But he's made no mistake. He said, Arch Manning's our guy. We're going to roll with him. And so far this spring, there's only been about 6 practices so far. But you hear about it in winter workouts. You started to hear about it the first 2 weeks of spring ball. He's taken on that leadership responsibility. And, we didn't get to see a lot of it last year when he was on the field. But I think there was no better encapsulation of Arch Manning as a competitor than that 16-yard touchdown run against Texas A&M when he got up. And he got licked on that run. Let's not forget. But you see the mean mug. You see his celebration, kind of mean swagger walk back to the sideline. The team is going to rally behind that, right? And that's not something that Quinn Ewers possessed, right? That just wasn't who he was. He had his own strengths, had his own weaknesses as a leader. But with Arch, you're certainly going to see it more outwardly expressed, which I think is going to help feed off this Texas football team next fall.
Sticking with the offense, CJ, because obviously Arch Manning is going to draw all the headlines, but a lot of other storylines, I feel like offensively, when you lose guys like Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden, a couple guys on the offensive line led by Kelvin Banks, you lose your reliable tight end in Gunnar Helm, you lose Jaden Blue. What have you seen from this offense outside of the quarterback position? Again, like you mentioned, only 6 practices in, but any emergence of guys that you feel like Texas is going to rely on, any flashes from anybody that you've seen? Because, again, it's a lot of new faces outside of the quarterback.
It's a lot of new faces in general. And look, Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, the 2 returning guys from 2024 that were expected to be kind of bona fide starters for your wide receiving room, they're out for the spring. Hamstring and a toe for Ryan Wingo, or a toe injury for DeAndre Moore, excuse me. So you're basically brand new, and you don't have a returning reception at all in the tight end room at the moment. So a lot of unknowns, a lot of unfamiliarity. Again, it's up for Arch Manning to get these really talented 4 freshman wide receivers up to speed. And I'll say this, Texas is really high on a lot of those young wide receivers. Again, there's about 19, 18 stars combined for those 4 freshmen that came in. But the one name that's really standing out, it's Parker Livingstone, the redshirt freshman, about 6'4", ran really well. Not necessarily the typical Steve Sarkisian wide receiver, but so far he's been the go-to guy in spring practice, and I expect him on the field immediately next fall.
CJ, switching sides of the football to the defensive side, like you mentioned, there's a lot of new faces everywhere. Obviously, the defense is going to be led by Ant Hill this fall. Colin Simmons is back, of course, but again, cast of characters are gone. Jahdae Barron, Barron Sorrell, Alfred Collins, Andrew Makuba in the secondary. What have you seen from that group? Obviously, one of the best defenses in the country a season ago. I'm sure that is the expectation yet again to follow up on what that 2024 defense did.
Yeah, that is the expectation now. And Texas, again, for as good as they were in the pass game, right, with that edge rush with Colin Simmons and Trey Moore a year ago, that's still the expectation. And right now, I talk to folks down here in Austin, we talk about it over on the channel as well. The pass rush next year for Texas could end up being as good as it's been in, name a year for the Longhorns. And that's really exciting. Of course, headlined by Colin Simmons at about 8.5, 9 sacks a year ago. But adding, a Brad Spence from Arkansas to play linebacker, to free up an Anthony Hill, to spin down a Trey Moore who's gotten looks back at the second level as well. there's plenty of pass rushing opportunities. And then you add in some of these guys that Texas brought in and into early enrollee class as well, right? Lance Jackson ended up being a composite 5-star. We talked about Justice Terry coming from Georgia, one of the top defensive linemen in the entire country. Well, he's standing about 270 pounds at the moment. So you're going to see him off the edge a lot more before you see him spun down into a 3-tech position, meaning that pass rush again has another weapon. So I do think Texas is going to have its ability to maybe mask not having the Thorpe or not having an Andrew Makuba hovering the middle of the field, because that pass rush is expected to take that leap into the typical Georgia conversation, or what we've seen in years past with an Alabama. So that's what we'll see. And again, when you have a Trey Moore who really turned it on the second half of the year, opposite of a Colin Simmons, you can't double them both. And if you do, you don't have many in the route combination. So that's the key right now, is to make sure Colin Simmons sees the field every single game, and Texas making sure he's doing that in the spring.
CJ, you mentioned those young receivers. Obviously, spring is a great opportunity for youngsters to shine and get their opportunity to show they belong in the field in the fall when the lights cut on. Anybody else that stood out to you, whether it's transfer, freshman, just newcomers that maybe the coaching staff is talking about or have caught your eye this spring?
Yeah, we'll stick with those freshmen. Jamie French, out of Mandarin, Florida, really talented. He's fluid. He can get in and out of his breaks. He's got great hands again. Texas has yet to really pursue a portal position on the offensive side of the ball, but they're going to have to, right? And that portal opens up in about a week. I'm looking at a tight end. I'm looking at a wide receiver. They'll obviously add another defensive lineman because they, again, have had to reconstruct that room 2 years in a row now. But where they go at the wide receiver spot is going to be really interesting, because they don't really have that one true speedster like we've seen with a Golden, with a Bond, with an Xavier Worthy. Who steps up in that room? It's going to have to be somebody out of the portal in my eyes.
CJ, sort of an interesting question for you, because I feel like after a season in which Texas, a very successful season, obviously, you go to the SEC championship game, you're the only team in college football that made it to the Final Four back-to-back seasons, 2 seasons in a row. I'm curious, because this time last year, we were talking about Texas's first season coming into the SEC. What is it going to be like? Or, are they going to be able to hit the ground running? Are they going to get humbled a little bit? There were a lot of people out there trying to make predictions, projections, whatever it might be. Now this spring, Sark and company and everybody affiliated with the program, you know what you're going to get. Like, what life in the SEC is. You've been through an SEC grind, an SEC schedule. Granted, you had a lot of success. Is there any difference from last spring to this spring in regards to, again, you've been through the fire now, you know what to expect? Is there any, changes in preparation or anything in general? Is it more just like business as usual for Texas? Doesn't really matter who the competition is?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Week 1, you're up at the Horseshoe. You're playing Ohio State, the defending champs. So you're going to be tested. What's going to be the biggest difference from what's going to be 2025 versus these previous teams under Steve Sarkisian is you got a brand new offensive line. And yeah, you got DJ Campbell. He returns at right guard. But aside from that, it's going to be a lot of first-time true starters, right? Cole Hudson's played sporadically. We've seen Trevor Gooseby fill in for an injured Cam Williams and Kelvin Banks a year ago. But other than that, you got Brandon Baker, a redshirt freshman from Modern Day who's stepping in at right tackle. You got a Nato Umeozulu, a fourth-year guy out of Allen who's finally stepping into his role at left guard. But how does that offensive line gel? Because that was the big thing coming into 24 is, hey, you return everybody. Right? That offensive line is going to be old. They're going to be experienced. They've been there. They've done it. They've won it at Tuscaloosa. They've gone on to win some really impressive games otherwise as well. That's going to be the strength. And for better or for worse, it was, right? Texas was good in pass protection. They weren't necessarily great in picking up a yard when they needed to. We saw that in the college football semifinal against Ohio State, right? When they go jumbo, when they need short yardages, that wasn't their strength. Now, they're hoping and they're expecting that is more of a strength in 25. But other than that, it's going to be a brand new team, brand new offense, basically. And again, how much of the cape can an Arch Manning put on to kind of alleviate and mask a lot of those growing pains that Texas is due to see? We'll have to wait and see, obviously, for that. But the expectation is that Arch kind of hides a lot of what otherwise would have hindered the Texas offense in years past.
CJ, I want to go back to the Arch Manning thing. Again, it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the thing everybody wants to talk about. we talked about his game, but, there was a lot of chatter last year, and I think respect to Quinn Ewers, I think very underappreciated, one of the best quarterbacks in Texas history. But can you even quantify the excitement for the Arch Manning era beginning? People finally, you got a little taste last year in that 4-game stretch when he came in, started, obviously played after that, and was really, really impressive for the most part. Can you even quantify just the buzz, the excitement? I know for you personally, those that cover Texas, and really the entire program, because it's like the day that everybody's been waiting for. It's like it's finally here, it feels like.
That's exactly how and again, no disrespect to Quinn, but it's tough when you have a Manning last name sitting on the sideline saying, okay, when are we going to see him? Right. And it was always one of those biggest applauses, biggest, eruptions from the crowd when you'd see 16 trot in, whether it be for a 4th down or, at the end of the game when you're there for mop-up duty. There's just a different buzz. And Arch is great at just shouldering it and saying, hey, I'm just another kid. I don't want to do anything special. But again, he's got the NCAA commercials. He's got a Red Bull athlete endorsement now. There's all sorts of excitement in the city of Austin. It's notable too, right? You'll see a 16 jersey just about every Texas sporting event. And to your point, he's yet to play a true start on the road, right? He's yet to really become the guy for Texas football, yet the excitement's insurmountable.
Certainly going to be coming out of the gate hot at Ohio State in week 1. CJ, before we get you out of here, obviously we all know at this point, I feel like Steve Sarkisian was sort of the trendsetter too with this. When he came out, it was, I think, a few months ago. I forget the show exactly, but said no spring game. We're not doing a spring game. What's been the reaction from Texas fans? And then your just overall thoughts on the way Steve Sarkisian is attacking this spring?
Yeah, I think there's a little disappointment, right? You want to go see Arch Manning throw, right? You want to go see all these brand new freshmen from the #1 recruiting class in the country on the field. And I get it, right? Because I want to see that too, right? I want to get out there to DKR and see, how this team is gelling so far after 15 spring practices. But Sarkisian's, the way that he's going about this spring is completely different because he's got 4 or 5 brand new assistant coaches on staff. We've talked about it. No career receptions practicing at wide receiver. No career receptions practicing right now at tight end. You return a lot of talent on your defense, but a lot of guys who are big key voices in your leadership department, they went to the NFL draft. So to use this spring football period as a OTA NFL style, hey, we just got to learn everything, right? Coaches got to get acclimated with the players. Brand new players got to get acclimated with the system. We're going to be teaching, and we'll probably take away some of the physicality that you typically see in a fall or in a spring scrimmage. But we know now that we're probably going to be in a position to play 14 or maybe 15 or potentially even 16 games. We just did it a year ago. How do we keep our legs fresh enough to go on a run just like that again, while also making sure that, hey, guys like a CJ Baxter, or guys like a Christian Clark who missed all of last year are eased back onto the field, and you don't lose anybody in a practice period for an extended amount of time.
The anticipation continues. Texas football obviously kicking off their season at Ohio State, like we mentioned. Our guy CJ Vogel going to be all over it. CJ, appreciate you taking the time, man. It's always a pleasure. Let folks know where they can find your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Twitter at CJVogel_OTF, or you can find me at YouTube at /OnTexas Football.
CJ, appreciate you taking the time, man. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, see you back down in Austin.